everyone. Welcome to the Art and Design panel here at the amazing Park House here in Dallas, Texas. We're so thankful to Park House for hosting us tonight. My name is Holly Portero. I'm one of the regional directors of Fashion Group International, along with my friend Rhonda Sargent Chambers, and we're thrilled that you're here with us to hear from these amazing visionaries in the art and design world. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce them to you. First is Deborah Scott, a native of New Zealand. Deborah is a co-founder of Park House right here, a private members social club located in Highland Park Village. Deborah has lived in the United States for 25 years, including 12 in Dallas. In addition, she recently lived in London and is a member of many of the clubs that became the inspiration for the vision and design of Park House. She brings extensive marketing, public relations, and branding experience to the Park House team. Welcome, Deborah. We're so happy to have you. Next is Brian Bolke, founder of the Conservatory. Brian is the Conservatory's chief visionary, founder, and president, known for his sharp eyes, style, and a career marked by retail innovation, which has been recognized around the globe. The Dallas-based luxury merchant has a long history in the retail realm. Prior to founding 4510, Bolke paid his dues with such fashion powerhouses as I. Magnin and Neiman Marcus. He later opened Dallas's premier florist, Avant Garden, and in April 2000, he parlayed the flower trade into a more fashion-minded venture with the late Shelley Messelman, and 4510 was born. He left as president in 2017 to start a new venture. Today, the Conservatory has galleries in New York, Dallas, and Napa Valley. Welcome, Brian. Thanks for being here. Next is Shelley Rosenberg. Shelley is a published interior designer and former FGI of Dallas rising star. She recently founded acornandoak.com, which is a specialized platform focused on adaptive and inclusive design for families living with special needs and disabilities. Thank you for being here. Next is Jeremiah Onafade. Focused on a practice that draws on historical, socioeconomic pulps and personal references, Jeremiah creates works that include questions posed to the relationship between human emotions, actions, reactions, and societies through layered figurative compositions. That is a mouthful. Got it. A Nigerian-born Dallas-based artist, Jeremiah Onafade, recently exhibited a 96-hour temporary installation called Blue Dot within a South Dallas home in the gentrified neighborhood of Bonton. This was accomplished with a grant awarded by the Dallas Office of Arts and Culture in 2019. And I might add, Jeremiah was also nominated for a Rising Star this year in art. So welcome. And then now I'm going to introduce our fabulous moderator, Terry Provencal, who I've known for many years. Terry is the founder, publisher, and editor-in-chief of Patron Magazine, dedicated to the arts in North Texas. During her rewarding publishing career, she has launched over a dozen publications for North Texas. In addition to Patron, she is publisher and editor-in-chief of the Dallas Arts District Guide, highlighting the vibrant visual and performing arts district. She received the Career Achievement Media Award from Fashion Group International of Dallas in 2012, and she co-chaired the FGI, Night of Stars from 2009 through 2011, and served on the board from 2005 to 2011. So thank you for all your years spent here in the arts in Dallas with FGI and for moderating today. Okay, without further ado, here's Terry.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you, Deborah, for hosting us at Park House here in Highland Park Village. What a great evening this is, and we're very excited to get to know our panelists. I know we're limited on time, so I'm going to go ahead and start, Deborah, with you, our hostess. And my first question for you, you're playing you're a balancing act right now. Those in the restaurant and entertainment industry have been deeply impacted by the coronavirus mandates. With your well-known ingenuity, your creative genius, in what ways have you responded to the CDC guidelines at Park House?
Yeah, it's been a challenging time for everybody, I think. The restaurant business, hospitality, my husband's a hotel guy. I mean, no one's traveling. What we've created here, I think, that's come through in the last few months that we've been open since May 8th is that we have a little bit of a haven. We have nearly 20,000 square feet. So as you can kind of see, I'm not sure you can see, but we've got a lot of patio space. We've got lots of very various restaurants and spaces within the club. So we were really pretty lucky that we were able to move things around, but not give up the sense of what our spaces were created for. And people have felt really comfortable. We've heard from a lot of members that this is the only place they've been coming up to. We've changed our protocols in a lot of cases on how people check in. We check them in downstairs. You have to have a reservation just even to come in for drinks, and we will seat you, sort of like the clubs actually in London. And it's really important to us that our members do adhere to those protocols, because we want people to feel comfortable. We want them to come up here and feel like they can have a near normal experience. Everyone's wearing all our staff are wearing masks and gloves, and we've been really lucky so far. We haven't had any cases, and it's become kind of a second home for a lot of people.
I bet that your customers are kind of looking at this as a place away from home, that they feel safe and comfortable, and they can experience the open air, which is great. Your patio is so wonderful, in your private rooms.
Well, we have outside music on a Wednesday night. I mean, no one can hear live music right now. People have been saying they really are missing that. And so you can sit outside in one of our big loungy sofa sections with some friends and actually really feel like you are having a normal evening. And so we've heard a lot of that kind of, those types of comments from our members.
Well, thank you, Deborah. And I have more questions to ask you that I'll come back to you with. And Brian, another creative genius in the group and visionary, I think only you would have opened a brand new store, the Conservatory on 2, in the middle of the pandemic. And this, I'll tell you what's been strange for me is I'm usually at an event every night, especially this spring. It's so hard to not go to the art fair and National Prize and all these different art ball and your art ball. I can't wait to go to it next year. And it's definitely impacted our buying choices, I would imagine, especially this fall too, when we have a lot of black ties and cocktail parties, 2x2 sadly moving to next year. How are your consumers' choices evolving? What would you say?
I think one of the most difficult parts of this is we all live in worlds, especially retail, especially events that are about planning. And if someone had said to you in March, here's how the next 6 months to a year is going to lay out, you could totally deal with it. If you remember, there was a moment where our president was saying, like, Easter, and I remember thinking we might move Art Ball from April 20th to May 20th, and now you couldn't even fathom it, right? So it isn't like we were all dealing with lots of knowledge of what was going to come down the pike, so planning would have made this a lot easier. I think a lot of events, made the choice we'll postpone it till the fall, which I never thought about doing for Art Ball because fall already was full of events that have to be dealt with, and the consumer can only take so much. So, I know we made the right choice for Art Ball. I think a lot of the events have 2x2, et cetera. In the end, postponing and is what has had to happen. Something I'm grateful for I actually opened, weirdly, 2 stores during a pandemic, and I actually got to do it though with full knowledge of what was going on, and that's the difference. I have a lot of friends in the business. I've been doing this for too long, and I'll just give you an example. I have a really good friend who has an amazing store in the Hamptons, and I said, "Oh, you're so lucky because the Hamptons are so busy." And she says, "No, not really, because I bought all those clothes last October for a summer that would have acted like the previous summer, right? And this summer is not acting that way." So, it's like everything, and I'm sure Deborah goes through the same thing. You have the best laid plans, but the world is not acting exactly how you want it to or how your plans go. So, what's actually been kind of nice though is it also simplifies people's lives. It's been nice not having things to go to, choices to make every night. I think it's made people reassess their closets. It's reassessed their calendar. It's reassessed their family. I think a lot of people went on shorter trips this year, but enjoyed them maybe more because they appreciated them. So, there's always good that comes out of things. I'm very fascinated actually about a year from now, and it will be so interesting to see, do things go back to how it was? Do they run back? Or is the change 20%? Is the change 80% of how people act? And I do think, there's a lot of talk about how this pandemic mirrors the 20s, the roaring 20s, and it will be interesting to see if that's what comes out of this, that people are freer, they want to enjoy, or are they going to be very reserved and all that. So it's never a dull moment.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
I have a lot more to ask you as well. And Shelley, it's so great to see you.
Thank you. You too.
And you always look head to toe great.
Thank you.
Notable interior designer here in Dallas. And I think that's really important for everyone right now. Home has become a sanctuary. It's become an unexpected workplace, an unexpected school. So what design solutions are you offering your clients to meet these new office from home, school from home mandates?
It is a booming business really for designers. We were saying things are really changing, and we usually think of our homes as our sanctuary, as a place to take the game face off. But now your home is now where you are having to perform. It's become our workplace and our school. And so it's so much more important. So we're doing things like taking rooms that we don't normally use very often, like your formal dining room or maybe a guest room, and really pivoting and changing those into workspaces or study spaces for kids. Looking at obviously upgrading our smart home technology and our internet, making sure things work. And then also I think, changing our lighting, using full spectrum light, a lot more natural light in homes because we're there more and we're working with the computers. And, so there's a lot of differences that are happening now in homes that we're taking advantage of and really kind of moving from just a refuge to a place where we now perform.
Well, thank you. And I have more questions kind of drilling down on your sustainable
That'd be great.
well-being
Yeah.
Platform.
Thank you.
Jeremiah, I was introduced to you at the Rising Star Awards, and I was dying to say your name because it's such a beautiful name, Jeremiah Onafade.
Thank you.
It's such a beautiful name. And I have such a huge passion for art and artists especially. And art making is typically a solitary experience for an artist, but the art itself seeks an audience. So in what ways are artists shifting to the social distancing limits, lack of gallery openings, canceled art fairs, and the like? How are you pivoting to get your art in front of an audience?
I think we should be really thankful for this period in technology where we have virtual reality. Two paintings come to mind. Edvard Munch, a self-portrait from the Spanish flu. I think it was 1918.
Yes, I thought about
And
that painting
Austrian
lately.
artist Egon Schiele, a portrait of Gustav Klimt a day after he died of the Spanish flu during that pandemic. Egon Schiele died the same year at 28, I think, after his wife and kids died. They weren't able to show all of their works, which was done in solitary during that period. But thankfully, we have technology, which is virtual reality. Art fairs like Basel has pushed forward, but still the other ones we can see, Dallas Art Fair we can see online. And artists have moved to online platforms. So for me, like you had mentioned, I got a grant last year from Dallas Office of Arts and Culture. And due to planning, the planning took about 8 months, and we had to keep pushing forward. And when it felt like I couldn't push forward anymore, I had to ask myself, was it an essential item? And of course, art is essential.
Sure is.
I figured I would insert myself into historical lines and run a show during the pandemic that incorporated virtual reality and a social distancing opening just to see what it felt like to practice art during the pandemic. I mean, what's the role of an artist if you can't insert yourself into those conversations and be a face and show people what's coming out of your studio at that point in time? A lot of times you're just not able to do that. So I think this is the time for artists to insert themselves in the conversation, in the story, in history, by just seeing how they can do what other businesses are using, how they can. It doesn't have to be the conventional method. Just come up with a new style. You know, as an artist, sit in your studio and think. This is the time for people to understand that I'm here.
Well, that's wonderful. That's inspiring to hear. Deborah, I'd like to ask you and your husband and Megan and Brady Wood, you're all art collectors. And what I'd like to ask is, do you feel investing in art has become more important now than before the pandemic?
Interesting. John and I have always collected art that we love, so the investing part hasn't been as important to us. And I think buying things to live with right now is super important. They're in your house. Hopefully they're inspiring. You love to look at them and spend time with them. It's like a favorite pet or a child almost. If you like it that much, you'll want to be around it. I mean, I think, like you were saying, our home is our haven now. We're spending so much time there, and I think people are changing things around and making it feel like it's super comfortable for them. When we worked on the art program here, I think it was really important for us that we picked things that we really liked, that spoke to us, that inspired us, that felt comfortable in the space. We looked to create an eclectic collection. I mean, I had certain artists, like I had to have a Marilyn Minter because I've got a shoe and the lips that I own, and we have now a bubble here. And so we all had kind of pieces that we wanted to add to it. I think the artwork nowadays really has become important, more so important to people. In our newsletter, we profile a member every week and a piece of art that speaks to them, that they love being within the same room. And that's been, our other members have really enjoyed reading that. And so I think the art in our world, our orbit, is now becoming more emotional than it ever was.
Thank you. Brian, in what ways are your brands rising to this unprecedented time in modern history, both through the pandemic, the call to embrace diversity and ethical practices? Are you adding new brands? I know many of your brands already mirror this mindset. So will you tell us a little bit about that?
It's a great question. I originally, after doing this for a long time, one of the reasons I wanted to kind of get away from the industry was I felt I was part of a very unsustainable cycle. Like the last year I was at 4510, I went to Europe 12 times for buying trips, which sounds really glamorous, and it is absolutely not. And sometimes you were literally flying from here to go to Europe for one appointment because that vendor said, we only show this one time, and if you want to buy it, you have to come now. And I found that rude, and I found it, hard on my own life and just even the carbon footprint. And, I think that when I think we can all put on a positive rose-colored glasses of the good that is going to come out of COVID, and retail is maybe one of the hardest hit industries with hospitality and all aspects of hospitality and travel. But there's going to be a huge change that comes out of it. And I've been involved in this sort of worldwide endeavor called Fashion Rewired, and it is about changing the cycle of fashion, of how it's shown, what the markets are, what the fashion shows are, when the consumer gets it, and when it gets marked down, which, people don't really understand. The waste of the fashion business, the stuff business, is so much. And, as we only see as consumers little pieces of it, it's hard to imagine what it is. But even alone making, a lot of huge brands are going to 2 collections a year instead of 4. Well, that's taking out half of the travel. It's taking out half of the waste. It's taking down half of the markdowns. These are massive shifts that it took something of this, paramount importance to finally make things happen, things that were being talked about for a very long time. So I think it's a huge positive piece that's going to come out of this, and it actually has made me care about this again. And we, I did this because there are so many small brands. Like we have 200 brands, and some of them are one-person brands, and it's like working with artists. And some of them are Michael Kors, and they might have 25,000 employees, but they all have something to say. And I think that, hearing Deborah talk about the hospitality and the travel business, and what people don't realize, we live in a world that spins, and when you stop buying, it's like a butterfly effect. It keeps going, and someone isn't getting paid in India, and what does that do to that person's family? I know that sounds, it's the truth. It's the reality. And so I really believe that if everybody consumes in a more intelligent way, more conscious of what they're consuming and how they're consuming and where the money's going, that is, I think, one of the greatest acts as a human that you can do. It sounds really easy to say, buy less. It's not about buying less to me. It's about using more. It's like if you buy something and you never use it, I think it's the biggest waste on the planet. If you buy something great and you use it or wear it or give it or enjoy it, like art, to have art that sits in a warehouse. A lot of people can and should do that. And when you think of it as an investment, for sure. But
I cringe.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I love Marilyn Minter as well, and I'm dying to have one. I know I would love it. I would know that I would look at it every day and feel a certain way, and that's what stuff and art and our lives should be about. So I think that the good that's going to come out of this is some level of a real, true change that's going to change this industry, and the economics and the butterfly effect. I think retail is maybe the 3rd largest industry in the United States. It's huge. And what people don't realize is that hotels and restaurants and stores and travel are what make life amazing. And if you don't support them and they start to go away, trust me, 6 months from now, it's not going to be so pleasant to live.
Absolutely. And as much as I've enjoyed these sales, the retail industry can't survive at 70% off.
Well, also, I think what's happened is I think a lot of consumers have bought a lot on these deep markdowns, consuming, and then I think it sits in your closet and you're like, why did I buy that? It was like some spark in your head that said, if it's cheap, I must buy it. Well, that's the worst. Again, it's just perpetuating, this sort of circle that I think once the consumer gets out of it, and there's great things happening. I think the secondary market is really important. I think that if I buy something and I enjoyed it for a year and I send it through a resale channel and someone else gets to enjoy it, I think that's awesome. That to me, that thing is living its full, complete life, not just dying in somebody's closet or on someone's dusty shelf. So I think that's I think we're going to see clothing rental and resale should be equal parts of the consumption cycle.
And so many artists reuse materials in their work. There's an artist at And Now Gallery, Leslie Martinez. I don't know if you're familiar with their work, but they incorporate discards from their own paintings and things like that and reuse them. So there might be like a terry cloth diaper in there in the painting. So I think artists are very sensitive to that. Shelley, I'm going to move on to you. And you are an expert in sustainable living and well-being. How do you see the future of interior design evolving post-COVID?
I think I'm loving what I'm hearing about our interconnectedness and our being more conscious. I do think that with interiors, there's so much room to not only buy sustainable, but to reuse. I love the whole idea of, reusing antiques and reworking different products, and also thinking about our planet. With this pandemic, I think everyone has really shifted to realize that we are all so interconnected. We're all here together. It's important to make sure that we're staying safe, but also to protect our planet as well. And so there's just so many ways with reusing the fashion and also investing in art and looking at this time to kind of learn more, become more conscious about your purchasing. There's a lot of that happening in design. Keeping the pieces that you have, reworking them, using rooms and every bit of square footage that you can that maybe, dining rooms might be going away and they're now becoming home offices or libraries that are multifunctional. So there's just so many exciting ways that we're all pivoting, and then I think we're, getting better.
That's wonderful that you still get to use your creativity during a challenging time, and I imagine your clients feel very happy when you come over and show them the way and how to make
and a lot of designers now, maybe all of you all are working on maybe just taking this time to reconnect with new people, meeting new artists and making new connections. It's just so important, and doing a lot of Zoom calls and meeting with clients on computer as well.
Thank you, Shelley.
Yes, absolutely.
Jeremiah, I think the role of an artist in today's movement-making climate must be challenging and in many ways inspiring. Are you using your talents to address social justice?
Sorry, I have to always start with art, historical, and paintings. Nina Simone said the role of an artist is to reflect the times. So you're a mirror, just show whatever you see. But a good picture I'll paint is Picasso in France after the war or during the war, and painting Guernica. And Guernica is 9 hours away from Malaga, where he was born. But he wasn't home, but still had to reflect the times, had to show forth what his thought was about the bombings going on in a city not too far from his home. So for me, the role of an artist is to ensure the potency of current, and this is just my opinion, ensure the potency of current issues around you as we roll through historical times. So I, for one, use happenings in my life. As you have mentioned, I was born in Nigeria, and I've gone through a religious crisis. This kind of seems like a part 2 in my life with this pandemic, because this is exactly how it felt in 2000. I was 13. And having learned a lot about art history and how previous masters have used issues in their life to paint what was going on. We know about the short life of Caravaggio when he died at 38, but the wonderful things he had done is now a template for other people to move forward. Velázquez working at the courts and how he understood that I have to pay homage to all these people. And you have Rubens. He was well established, but he had to consult those people. So I'm trying to make a practice to where 80 years from now, when people see what I've done, it's going to incorporate both the psychological, historical, philosophical, the creative, and the building parts of the arts and the society into what they have to do at that point in time. So I'm trying to be a very conscious artist of our times.
Well, I think that's so important. And looking at art, I mean, art, if we take care of it, can last for centuries upon centuries.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about art. I've been looking at a lot of the plague paintings and different things that mark times of unrest in humanity. Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate that. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to quickly ask you, Deborah, I'm going to kind of change our last question, because what I love about Park House is it embraces both art and design and hospitality, the art of food and the art of gathering. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with the concept and the
Well, we
design
basically
elements.
copied it. I mean, we were living in London and loved the clubs that we'd joined when we got over there, Five Hertford or Annabelle's, the Arts Club. There's 7 different Soho houses throughout London, all have very different feels. And we used to be at the clubs all the time. So when we were planning to come back to Dallas, we thought, gosh, we want to bring this back for ourselves personally. And our partner actually found this location, and then they came over to London, and we basically spent a 4-hour whirlwind, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We went to every club. If we didn't belong to it, our friends got us in. We did the same with our interior design firm out of LA, Studio Collective, and with Kenyon Price, our general manager. A whole whirlwind of showing them what the clubs were like in London. And so when we were designing this with our firm, we basically cherry-picked all the elements of the different clubs that we loved so much. I mean, this feels very much like the patio out here with the water feature by Sarah Crowner, a female artist out of New York. That was based on either the Soho House in Shoreditch or New York, if you've been to the one, and the original in New York down in the meatpacking. The spaces were, a lateral 18,000 square feet, but we wanted to have small, intimate spaces among our very large spaces, like we're sitting right now in our kind of white box special event space, but we've got the Peacock Room, a little intimate space, and the Moroccan and different DJ booths and niches to sit in. And so that was what was important to us, is to have this space that felt personal, yet it had a common thread that went through it. And then the art kind of brought it all together. And I mean, I think people were surprised. I mean, a lot of people joined before we ever even opened, based on just kind of a vision and faith in us. And it's come to life, and to see people using it as we expected. Obviously we've tweaked around the edges, but it pretty much has been really used and experienced as we anticipated. It has been really like amazing, dream come true. Just getting my husband out.
Well, it's fantastic. I know that everyone enjoys gathering here, and you have so many art collectors as members. Yeah. I was really looking forward to your art programming during the Dallas Art Fair, but April will be here before you know it. We're already in September almost. And Brian, I'd like to ask you too. Art plays a role in the conservatory, and of course in your own life and Faisal's. You're collectors and very supportive. You're chairing Art Ball, and you've always incorporated art into the retail atmosphere. So can you tell me a little bit about those?
My background's in architecture, and I started in store planning and design, and I actually was much more interested and cared more about these store environments than the actual stuff in them. And I think what's been interesting for me as again this industry moves forward, and I think you're going to see this more. If it's about stuff, you just should get it on your phone. You could be like, "Hey Alexa, I want that thing," and it shows up at your house. So, and that was not an option 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. So you have to create environments that make people think and gives the stuff, the Alexa stuff, context. And art is, I love what you said about homes, and as we're talking about havens, and art speaks a lot about your values and how it can tie things together. When we opened the store in Hudson Yards, we did this Ron Gallela photography show, and it was, what I loved about it wasn't so apparent, but his photography was very important in the late 70s, early 80s to the early 90s. But it was a time that area of New York was clubs and kind of seedy and sort of like not where like the uptown ladies went. And his imagery was a lot of like celebrities and uptown people coming to these downtown places, and how those areas mixed. And I thought there was something really amazing about that messaging, about how this particular physical place came together, maybe 30 years before, and what it looked like. So, maybe I'm the only one that made that connection, but there was something about all that put it together. And so I think that art, and we do a lot of changing of art, and with all different genres, and things that are very expensive and things that are not expensive, it doesn't matter, because the art speaks. And that's one of the things I love about retail is, and something I kind of, again, the silver lining of COVID is, this is a moment, and everyone has to live in it together. It's probably the first time in our lives. It wasn't like, oh, that happened in New York, or that happened, oh God, there was a terrible typhoon in that place that you can't even imagine. It's happening to everybody. But the beauty is everyone's going to get out of it at the same time. And so, you know, I think the art from today is going to be about a moment and the programming of art. And it's also very interesting. You know, I'd been planning Art Ball for a year, and then it got canceled, and now it's a year later, and I'm starting working on it again. But how I think about it is quite different, you know, because we're going to emerge in a different time. So I think art reflects the times, and whether it's a restaurant or a retail, we need to be cognizant of it.
Well, that's a great way to wrap it. And I wish that I had more time to ask. I could talk to the four of you for much, much longer. I want to thank Deborah and Highland Park Village and Fashion Group International of Dallas for hosting us this evening. What a fabulous panel. I urge you to Google them, or you could probably find any information through Fashion Group International of Dallas. And thank you.